Ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Fort Benning. I am Colonel Chris Budas, Chief of Staff for the Maneuver Center of Excellence. On the behalf of our Commanding General, Major General Patrick Donahoe, and Command Sergeant Major Martin Celestine Jr., I would like to welcome you to the last day of the 2020 Virtual Maneuver Warfighting Conference. Presenting this morning will be Lieutenant General James Rainey, Commanding General, United States Army Combined Arms Center in Fort Leavenworth. Also, Sergeant Major of the Army, Michael Grinston, and Command Sergeant Major Jason Schmidt, Commandant, United States Army Sergeants Majors Academy. We'd also like to remind everyone to visit our pre-recorded Maneuver Warriors Corners at your convenience. Also, as a reminder, once a session is completed, you must return to the agenda page and click on the next session to view it. Our first speaker served in key leadership positions in light, airborne, cavalry, and armored formations over the last 30 years in the United States Army. He has operational and combat tours in Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Commanding General, United States Army Combined Arms Center in Fort Leavenworth, Lieutenant General James Rainey.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm coming to you today from Fort Sill, but I'm the commander of the Combined Arms Center, and I'm really humbled to have the opportunity to talk to this great audience and be in a list of incredibly distinguished speakers. It's awesome to be back at Fort Benning, even if it's virtually. And just for the record, I am an infantryman, combined arms maneuver guy by trade, but I'm here working on some stuff with General Camper, our great commander of the Fire Center of Excellence. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about leader development. I'd like to start by telling you that some of the best leader development people we have in the Army right now serving are down there at Fort Benning. General Pat Donahoe is somebody I've learned a bunch from. Kevin Admiral is one of the best people I've seen in meaningful mentorship. And General Hodney is not only a phenomenal leader development, but writes about it and shares what he knows with the force. And Sergeant Major Celestine's as good a trainer as I've bumped into in 33 years in the Army. So you all are in good shape down there. So why talk about leader development at the Maneuver Conference? I would offer to you that the two most significant strengths we have as the United States Army are our people. So we have better people, better leaders, better commanders, and the fact that we practice maneuver warfare, okay? Maneuver warfare, the American way of fight. We don't do attrition warfare. And the nexus of those two things, building leaders who can fight that way, leader development and training are the secret sauce. That's why we have the best Army in the world. So they make sense to have them together. I'm going to start off with a test. So take out a piece of paper and a pencil. It'll be short, 10 question, fill in the blank. Give you a second. Question number one, what's the most decisive element of combat power? Most decisive element of combat power. What's the most common, question number two, what's the most common characteristic of cohesive teams? What's the best way the Army can stop the terrible problems we have with sexual assault, sexual harassment, suicide, and racism and extremism? What's the best way to stop that? Question number four. Sergeant Major is going to talk to you about This Is My Squad. What's the best way to drive This Is My Squad into our Army culture? Question number five. What's the best way to ensure that our great soldiers and their families are cared for? Number six. What's the best way to fix a broken maintenance program in your formation? What's the key to an effective unit training management program? Number seven, what's the key to an effective unit training management program? Number eight, what's the most rewarding part of your current assignment? Number 9, why is U.S. Army Ranger School the most important school for small unit leaders to attend? Number 10, last one, what do you want your legacy to be when you're done serving and transition to soldier life? What do you want your legacy to be? All right, I'll give you a second. All right, we're going to grade this real quick. Here's what I'll tell you. If you wrote leadership in all 10 of those questions, then you got an A+. All right? Leadership is the answer to every mission that we have and every problem we have and every challenge you have. It's key to everything we do on and off the battlefield, right? Leadership. It's a human endeavor, contest. War is a contest between humans, test of wills, right? It's about leadership. And that's why I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. So if you agree with me that leadership is that important, then you better think about, we all collectively ought to be really good and committed to effective leader development in our formations and in our programs. So to put it another way I like to talk about. So if I ask you or anybody, what makes a good leader? What makes a good leader? I'm very confident that all of us, all of you, could very easily and almost instantaneously have an opinion on that. Leads by example, takes care of his people, high character, dedicated, right? Everybody that I've bumped into in our profession has a pretty easy answer for what makes a good leader. But if I flip that and ask, how do you make a great leader? How do you make a great leader? My experience, I've been doing this a while. My experience is about less than 10% of leaders in the Army have a thoughtful answer to that question. And the reason some people struggle with that is because they haven't put the work in and they haven't thought about it and they haven't developed their own ideas and approaches to that with the right amount of effort. So what makes a leader? What makes a great leader? Easy question. How do you make a great leader? Takes some work. Takes some work. So if you're still with me, right? Leadership, essential to everything we do. You got to put the work in. You got to understand how to make a great leader. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this, share some thoughts, and then I'll take some questions if you have them. So most everything I've learned that has been really helpful in my career, I learned in Ranger School. And I've been to a lot of schools and all of them, but one of those things is start with actions on the objective, right? Where are you trying to go? What are you trying to do? What's your purpose? All that's about start with where you're going, right? So actions on the objective in leader development is what are you trying to develop, right? And you can't just have generic groupings of all leaders. You got to be precise. What leaders am I trying to develop at echelon, in my NCO corps, in my what lieutenants do I want to develop? What's the end state I'm trying to accomplish? And there's a few ways to think about that. One is knowledge, skills, and behaviors. Okay, knowledge, skills, and behaviors. What do you want? You're developing a leader. What do you want him or her to know? What do you want them to be able to do? And how do you want them to act? Right? How do you want them to behave? Knowledge, skills, and behaviors. You need to put some work into that, and that needs to be tailored in your leader development program to the assignment that they have, right? So that's how you talk about a squad leader, a section sergeant, a first sergeant, a company troop battery commander. Knowledge, skills, and behaviors tied to their assignment and position. You also need to develop them as a leader, right? Generically, in the context of being a good, effective Army leader. We've got great doctrine on that. 622, we got attributes and competencies, right? I think those are all right and essential. I don't think it's all inclusive. I think you should personalize your leader development plans as you're developing a leader in terms of their leadership. And then one I really want to talk to you about that is probably the one that gets ignored, unfortunately, more than it should, is part of your leader development efforts is to develop professionals. All right. I know you all know this, but we are members of a profession. We do not have jobs. We don't work at the Army. We are the Army. And it's very important that we continue that. Okay. If we lose that, then we lose everything that we are. Everything we do, the trust and confidence of the American public, the trust and resources that were provided by Congress and civilians that control our military are underpinned by trust. And that trust depends on us acting like and behaving like and living up to the expectations of a profession versus a job. That's really a whole nother conversation that I would love to have with anybody if you want to reach out to me. But there's three big parts of that, right? So you got to develop professionals. You got character, competence, and commitment, right? So the chief talked to all of us yesterday, talked about corrosive threats to the Army, right? Horrible problems we're having, totally unacceptable. Sexual assault, harassment, suicide, and any kind of racism or extremism. I would offer to you a way to drive that home is to talk about character, our expectations as professionals, because none of that stuff is conducive with high character behavior. High character people don't do those things. People who do those things have issues with their character. And that's why that matters. One of my favorite things I learned growing up is words whisper, actions thunder, right? You can talk a lot, but the best way to develop leaders in terms of character is to role model. What you say your values are match how you act and behave as a leader. So that's kind of a lead by example challenge. We got to develop competence. Got to be competent in a lot of things in our profession. It's hard, it's complex, it's getting, the speed and scale of the future. I don't know a lot about the future, but I know it's going to be more violent, faster, and larger scale than we've ever seen in the history of warfare, just because of the technology. I would offer to you, if you're going to pick a couple things to focus on in competence, a couple good ones are to be a competent leader and to be able to war fight, to be able to fight your formation and your equipment. So there's a good place to start. I will tell you personally, if a leader can't lead and can't fight, there's really no use for them. I mean, they're just of no value to our profession, to our units, and what we do. Good news is most people are very good at that. You can move on. But those are kind of the first principles: competent leaders and competent warfighters. And then you got to talk about commitment as you build professionals, right? And everybody hears commitment, they think hard physical work. That's a big part of it. But there's also an emotional element, being committed, emotionally impelled to our profession, to be all in, to believe in your heart that how well you do your job is going to determine whether men and women that volunteered to serve the Army are going to live or die in combat. You ought to be able to get pretty emotionally committed if you subscribe to that. So you got to know where you're going. Actions on the objective, right? You got to think about it in terms of the assignment the person's in. You got to think in general terms about leadership. And I implore you to drive home the fact that we're members of profession. So now we know where we're going. We got actions on the objective. The next step is to figure out where we are, right? It's always helpful to know where you are at any given point in time. And that's about assessments. So you're trying to develop a leader. You know where you're trying to take that leader. You got to understand where that leader is in that point in time. And it's very difficult, and a common mistake is people do general assessments of a cohort of people, right? Like the NCOs in this unit, or my squad leaders, or all the lieutenants. The more precise you can be in assessing where an individual is at, the more effective you'll be, because it's different, right? We got a bunch of different ways to be great in the U.S. Army. People are different. They have different strengths and weaknesses. So the more precision you can determine your start point with a leader that you're trying to develop, the more successful that you will be. The Army's working hard on assessments. we've got an effort going on in TRADOC and CAC to do career-long assessments. We're going to do that in all levels of officer PME. It's starting in BOLIC now. It's going to start in the captain's career course by the end of the year. Next year, we'll be doing NCO cohort, warrant officers and civilians. And those are about helping soldiers become more self-aware and helping leaders do a better job of leader development. And there's lots of other ways you can assess people. You know, one of the best ways is to interact personally, right? That you can do in a unit. But what are you trying to assess? You want to know a bunch of things about a person, their fitness level, their cognitive skills, their emotional intelligence, technical and tactical competence, how well they can warfight. Their formation is always a good one. Communication, to include listening, right? Listening is, I would offer, the most important communication skill that every human I've ever met could be better at. But you got to assess people. What areas do you want to assess that officer, that NCO that you're trying to develop? And then how are you going to do it? There's some good tools out there. Intuition is good. Your personal experience by interacting is probably more effective than any kind of test or tool that you're going to use. But there's a lot of great products that are out there that can help you with that assessment. And you can't just, generally assess somebody, right? You got to understand where they're at on what we call a continuum of competence, right? So is somebody knowledgeable? They know about it. Are they proficient? They can do it most of the time, do it to standard. Are they an expert? Meaning that they consistently demonstrate the ability to do something under any given conditions or adversity. And then really, when you get up into more senior NCOs, senior warrant officers, you will find people that have achieved a mastery level of something, and that's important to know because you want to leverage that backwards into your formation. People ask the difference between expert and master. I'm not 100% sure. Just in my mind, if you're a master, if you're at mastery level of something, you have the ability to create other experts. So there are people that are experts at things that can't transfer that skill set. So I think we all aspire for mastery level, where we not only are experts, but we can create other experts. That's kind of the gold standard that we're looking for. So you know where you're going, you got actions on the objective, now you've done a good assessment, you know where you are, and now you can start doing a lot of hard work, right? Those are pre-LD things you need to be able to do to build an effective leader development program and system in your formations. So once you know that, you need to develop collectively with your team, your staff, your senior non-commissioned officer, an officer teammate, however you do it. You got to build a detailed plan. Okay, this isn't philosophy stuff. This isn't, and I got no problem with philosophies. I got no problem with strategies, but this isn't philosophy and strategy business. This is plan. This is a planning thing. You need to write an order, clear, concise, how we are going to do leader development in our formation. You need to lay out those objectives that I was talking about, where you want to go by cohort. And even then, just like when you're fighting, the order is interesting. You get a might work plan, you still got to do what? You got to fight it, right? You got to pay attention. You got to adjust. You got to react to contact. What I see most people fail at, if they get this far down the process, is they fail to adequately resource their leader development plan. My experience is everybody thinks it's important. You ask anybody, yeah, leader development's important. Some people have a plan, some don't, but it comes down to resources. And you all know the number one resource, right, is time. Are you dedicating time? If leader development's important, you believe in it, are you putting time against your priorities? If you're a little more senior person and you're in the training schedule, training management business, I challenge you to pull out about your last 6 weeks worth of training calendars and training schedules and see how much no kidding time you've dedicated and resourced to your leader development. Think about your unit. Do we talk, our unit, do we talk about leader development at company training meetings? Is that something we talk about? If you're in the QTB, Commander's Dialogue, battalion, brigade commander, command sergeant major business, are we talking about leader development as part of our quarterly and semi-annual processes? Just a sidebar on that, I get a lot of, it drives me nuts, I'll just tell you get a lot of people like, hey, you do leader development? Well, I'm too busy training to do leader development. Okay, I don't know if you ever heard that from a young leader. Hey, listen, short of combat, training is the best leader development opportunity you have, right? They are interrelated. You can't say you've developed a good leader if you haven't developed a good trainer, and you can't have a better opportunity to do leader development short of combat than getting out doing tough, realistic, hard training. As you're fighting your plans, you got a plan, you're fighting it, you got to track it, right? You think about anything you're doing when you fight, you got some system in your JOC, in your company CP, right? You're tracking it. How am I doing? Am I making progress? What's working? What's not working? And then adjust, right? Fight the enemy, not the plan. Okay, you gotta think about it in great detail. You gotta pay attention. You gotta move to it, and then you gotta hold people accountable, right? I mean, that's part of what we do. If you got a population you're trying to develop, you got a plan. You said, hey, company commanders, I want you to focus on lieutenants. Battalion commanders, I want you to focus on lieutenants. Hey, first sergeant, I'm holding you accountable for E6, squad leader, section sergeant. I want you to build our staff sergeants, right? Whatever that, then hold people accountable, right? Give them the authority commensurate with the responsibility you're giving them. Talk to them about it. And they're great people. Everybody loves doing it. They'll do it if you give them the time. They'll do it well, and you hold them accountable for the results of that. So for all those things I'm talking about, you don't know where you're going, you don't have a good feel for where you're at, you don't have a detailed, thoughtful, properly resourced and battle-tracked and fought plan to move from where you are to where you're going, I would just challenge you to put the work in. It's hard, you gotta fight for it. But there's nothing you can do better for your formation than build great leaders. Right? Build great leaders. Just like you learned how to shoot your weapon, you learned how to do maintenance, you learned our tactics, you've read our doctrine, you got to learn this. You got to be super passionate about it. It's the best way to improve your formation. It's the key to winning in combat, and it's the answer to everything we do for our great men and women that serve with us. So if I'll break it, I told you all that, I'll kind of break it down if I was going to put a bumper sticker. And it's train plus test equals trust. That's what I think about. It's on my whiteboard, front page of my green notebook, right? Train plus test equals trust. When we fight the next time, I hope it doesn't happen like you, but probably will. It is going to be the most decentralized fighting. You may issue an order and not talk to anybody again for a long time, right? Good news, that's how we fight, right? We're initiative-oriented, purpose-driven, so we're good. It's one of our strengths. But when you issue orders in combat, you got to know what's going to happen, right? So how do you build that trust, that critical trust that underpins our ability to do mission command, do anything initiative-oriented warfighting, anything we do is on trust. And I will tell you, if you think about it, think about somebody in your career in the Army. If you train someone and you test that, you trust that person almost implicitly, right? If somebody else trained them, somebody else tested them, but we're all professionals, them, they've been to a school and graduated, that's a lesser degree, but there's inherent trust in that. But it is uncomfortable being in combat. Trust me, it is uncomfortable being in combat, issuing orders to someone, life and death, mission accomplishment business, if you didn't train them and you didn't test whether they learned it, because then you're extending trust that is not underpinned by your personal experience. So that's kind of, if you remember anything, for you younger folks, just remember that. If you train them, you test them, you trust them. That's kind of the Paul Harvey of leader development, if you will. So the chief talked, and Sergeant Major's going to talk to you. Great leaders talking about people, right? And they're 100% right? People are the priority in the Army right now. So if you believe that, right, then there's all kinds of people. There's soldiers, there's leaders, there's commanders. There's a leader development aspect of that. So people are our priority. I challenge you, each and every one of you, to get excellent at leader development. Make time for it. Refuse to let it get bumped off the training schedule, right? I know there's all kinds of reasons. You got to fight to train. You got to fight to develop leaders. So with that, we'll leave it. I think if I was writing a mission statement for a leader, NCO officer, anybody, civilian, warrant officer, if I had to boil down a mission statement to somebody in the U.S. Army that was in a leadership position, I could put it on two things. You got to lead well and develop others. Lead your formation, make people better. Make that your legacy. And we have all kinds of ways to help you with that. So if you're buying what I'm talking about today and you don't understand it, reach out to your organizations that you're in, and hey, send me a note. Call me personally. I will stop what I'm doing to make time for anybody that's passionate about this. That's how strongly I feel about it. So that is the prepared part of my presentation. I'm standing by for questions. Again, thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, good morning, sir. This is Colonel Chris Budos, Chief of Staff down at Fort Benning. How do you read the station?
I got you loud and clear, Chris. How are you?
Sir, doing great. I'm going to facilitate the question and answer period from the field. So our first question to the field is the following. Approximately 5 years ago, our first two female Ranger officers graduated from Ranger School, and gender integration was instituted in the maneuver force. How are we doing, and where can you see improvements in our gender integrated leader development?
But you know, Chris, I was proud to serve as the Chief of Infantry during that time period, working for General Miller and General McKean. Yeah, I don't know that I've, to be honest with you, I don't know that I've spent any thoughts about breaking down leader development from a gender standpoint. You know, I think leaders are leaders, and I probably don't think it'd be healthy to spend too much energy on that. I mean, we got great leaders in the Army. I think we're past, candidly, I think we're past that. I think there's phenomenal people doing a great job and have an incredible amount of success. I don't mean to make light of it. It's something we need to, you know, inclusiveness is important. We got a lot of work to do. But I think when I see somebody, I'm all about, can they do their job? Can they lead? Can they accomplish their mission? Can they make better? And I think the gender integration efforts, you know, Ranger School and other places are just proven that it's 100% about the quality and character of the leader, and not much else matters in our great Army.
All right, sir. Thank you. So our next question is the following: since the professional military education, so do you consider PME programs more training or education? And then the following question was, do you believe we have the right balance between training and education at CGSC at this time?
Yeah, so the answer to is PME training or education? The answer is yes. Not to be flippant, it's got to be a balance of both, right? And it's been a historical thing, you know, how much training versus how much education. What I tell the folks running the college is that you train for the known and you educate for the unknown, right? So if you think about warfighting, there are things we know we are going to have to do, and we need to train people to be able to do that. The complexity and chaos and fog and friction that is part of our profession and is part of combat, some of it is just unknowable. So that's where education comes in, understanding how to think, how to learn, the importance of culture, systems theory. I mean, you can pick a bunch of PME things. So I think the answer to the balance part depends on where your Army's at, what level of school you're talking about, at what point in time. So CGSC is kind of the, that's kind of the midpoint of an officer's professional career. It's a transition from company to field grade. Got to be a full-time card-carrying member of the profession when you leave there. So it's a really important school. So I think it's a little weighted, probably 70-30 education to training right now. If everybody showed up, trained at everything they know they need to do, then we could go 100% training. But as we transition the Army, start thinking about large-scale ground combat operations, the chief talked about a perpetual state of competition. The idea that you win or lose competition determines whether you fight wars that you don't want to fight or not. That's kind of new thinking. It's emerging doctrine. So we gotta shift a little bit back towards training, at least at CGSC. So right now I'd say it's about 50-50 and probably in the right place for the next couple of years. And that course is entirely tailorable, so each individual officer can use the elective portion to bias towards training or education based on their personal needs.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is the following. Do you anticipate any changes in knowledge, skills, and abilities required of junior leaders in the future for them to be more successful or be successful on future multi-domain operation battlefields?
Yeah. I often say I'd love to be starting my career over again, maybe not being a lieutenant again, but I'd love to be a company commander because the challenge that people, from about squad leader to company troop battery commander right now, man, I mean, they got to be able to do, on one hand, and I say all the time, the closer you are to a squad, the less war changes, right? So no matter who we fight and when we fight them, that there is going to be that moral domain of combat, that last 500 yards contest of will between humans, part of combat that's always there. So they're going to have to learn that. But understanding and dealing with the technology and lethality and speed and scale of the future battlefield, it is, man, what a fun challenge to get after and start thinking about. So got to be able to do everything we've always needed to do, but you got to put some new skills. I was raised, I understand the land domain. That's what the Army does. That's where people live. That's the only place that wars are won. And as I progressed through my career, I've kind of inherently understood the air domain. No Army, you don't ever want to get in a fight without Big Blue, without the Air Force with you, right? And I got a little older and started understanding the importance of information, right? It doesn't matter what you do if that's not the story that gets communicated sometimes. So, but even still beyond that, now you got to understand space. You got to understand the maritime. The nexus of ground and sea is coming. It's been something that's been out there, but now they're inseparable, right? We can't deploy. And the Navy, the maritime theater needs help from the land component to be able to operate. So I think it's gone from needing to have a deep understanding of land, know how to employ air, understand information, to now having to have a deep knowledge and understanding of all 5 domains. And really, it's about the capabilities and information that exist in those other domains and being able to bring those to bear, having the people, processes, and pipes to bring those to bear in the land domain, and then how to take capabilities we have in the land and extend them into the other domains in the interest of the joint force accomplishing its purpose in support of a combatant commander. So yeah, there's a lot of new knowledge, skills, and behaviors that are required to be successful on that battlefield.
Thank you, sir. Our next question, a couple questions from the field. You talked about leader development, sir. Any advice on leader certification? What's your advice or best practices that you have seen or used yourself that you can pass on to current or future brigade and battalion commanders and sergeants majors about leader certification programs?
Yeah, so we're all products of our experience. I'm a, what I said. You got to know where you're going. You got to know where you are. You got to have a detailed plan to get there. Leader certification programs is a subset of that. I'm a fan. I think they're a good idea. They're really good for brigades to have for new lieutenants, right? Not so much captain. I wouldn't have one for captains. I mean, that's maneuver. By the time you decide to give somebody a company troop battery or make somebody a first sergeant, they're probably past the need for a deliberate certification program. But bringing new officers into your formation at brigade level or battalion level, if your brigade doesn't, I think argues for a pretty detailed certification program. Our NCOs are phenomenal. NCOE, yes, they know how to build. If you give them the time, they know how to build great NCOs. I would surely support my senior non-commissioned officer teammate if he wanted to do one, but the one place they are really valuable is bringing new lieutenants into your formation. We used to have these things called green tabs in the Army. I hope we bring them back someday. But when I showed up in both units, I was a lieutenant in the 82nd in the Ranger Regiment. You had to get certified. You had to prove that you were worthy of leading the men and women in that formation. Don't make it. It's not a hazing thing. It's not prop blast and stuff like that. But it shouldn't take more than a couple weeks to 30 days. Move them rapidly through a certification, and not in lieu of your leader development program, but a way to bring them on. So I'd encourage people to do that. You can get real creative. I was in one unit where the lieutenants had to go in and counsel the first sergeant properly, performance counseling, and then the first sergeant certified them. So they weren't allowed to start counseling his NCOs, our NCOs, until they demonstrated the ability to do that. In third ID, you had to go get the warrant officer down in the motor pool to sign off and say you were okay to touch and lead a maintenance program in your platoon and spend millions of dollars every day. That's probably something you might want to certify. There's lots of ways to do it, but I'd encourage people. And I know everybody's thinking like, I don't have time to do that. I just go back to my point, man. If you don't have time to develop leaders, come on. You got to make time for priorities.
Sir, thank you. Sir, we got a couple questions from the field. Reference Project Athena. Sir, can you speak to what Project Athena is and what we can expect in the future as this is rolled out?
Yeah, so it goes back to that assessment thing. So we're learning a lot about talent management, leader development, people as a priority. In the officer cohort, we did a thing called BCAP for our battalion commanders, did a bunch of assessments. And General McConville and General Funk, my boss, said, hey, we don't want to wait 16 years and we don't want this to be an officer only thing. So we're driving an assessment, career-long assessment approach to all 4 of our cohorts. So Project Athena is what that is. Don't worry about the name. But we're starting with the officer cohort, not because they're more important, but candidly because they got the most work to do on this. Our NCOs get assessed every day in formations, but we don't have that ethic and mentality throughout the depth of our officer corps. So starting in all the BOLIC, so everybody coming this summer, all lieutenants, West Point, OCS, direct commission, ROTC, are going to get baselined on about 7 different skills. Not to have secrets about them and try and understand their inner workings. It's about them leaving BOLIC with a self-awareness of what their strengths and weaknesses are and what they need to work on in the leader self-development space moving forward. And then they'll also leave with self-development plans and individual development plans that when they show up at their unit, if they are fortunate enough to end up in a place where that unit values leader development and they have a commander or supervisor who cares about them, they'll be able to jumpstart that leader development program with that data. We're trying to figure it out, so we want to go fast, but we don't want to be stupid, right? So we're going a little slower at the captain's career course. Great leaders down there at Fort Benning are figuring that out. And as soon as we get it figured out at Benning, we'll spread it to the other captain's career course. And the CGSC class that started a couple days ago will undergo an assessment battery over the course of their year. And then I'm working real hard with Sergeant Major Grinston, Sergeant Major Schmidt, who's going to talk to you. Great CSM is running the NCO Center of Excellence. Are going to figure out how we do this correctly in our NCO court, and then we're also working with our warrants and civilians, which we'll bring online next year. But a very important effort, very, very important effort. Like I said, you got to know where you are. You know, the first thing, you got to know where you're going, but if you don't know where you are, you can't get there. So all about self-development. And one thing I've noticed, I've been doing this a while, like almost every great leader I've been around, you know, pick a rank, pick a branch, they put the work in, you know, they work on their own. They go to the gym on the weekends. They fight to be, you know, a good parent. You know, they fight to find time to support their spouse and their kids. They read books professionally, and when they got a gap in their swing, they know what it is and they work hard to fix it. So really, the effort to do a career-long assessment approach is to increase self-awareness so that the people that do want to be great, do care, want to put the work in, can do that more effectively.
Sir, our last question is following. Got a number of questions from the field on, you know, leader development and training management kind of go hand in hand, obviously. So the question is, the understanding and implementation of training management is consistently being brought up in various professional articles and forums as a deficiency in junior leaders, specifically at the captain below level. Do you foresee any changes to company grade and senior NCO, PME, POIs in the future?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We can always do better. You know, I'm not defensive. I mean, the trade act, you know, my boss, we exist to support the operating force. And if the feedback from the operating force, people out in units, is we're sending out, you know, people that aren't good enough and don't understand unit training management, we take that very seriously. So I'm doing a review right now, getting great support from, you know, the corps commanders and sergeant majors, giving us a little more clarity on what exactly is it that we're not teaching that would be helpful. So that there's always room for improvement in education. But I'll tell you, Chris, and everybody, my experience with unit training management has been not that people don't know how to do it, it's about op-tempo and predictability. You know, the units that I saw in my experience, I got a lot of time in the operating force. The thing that breaks down effective unit training management is the inability to protect and predict, right? If you tell almost any one of our we got great lieutenants, great captains, our NCOs are phenomenal. You know, if you go to a training meeting on Thursday and you say, hey, 3 weeks from now, we're going to go to the field, we're going to do movement to contact, live fire at night, people know how to do that. You know, people know how to resource that training. People know how to look at those tasks and say what leader, soldier, individual tasks we got to do. You know, our NCOs are so good. If you tell them, like, hey, 3 weeks from now, we're going to be out there live firing, doing this, they can rip that apart. They can know their people. They can go to the job book. They can say, hey, we got to work on, you know, this weapon system, this combo device, this individual warrior skill, so that when we get to the collective training, we're not going to AAR talking about deficiencies in our individual soldiers, you know. So I think acknowledging we can always continue to train. I think the best thing you can do to improve your unit training management is improve predictability. Op tempo is hard. The captains aren't driving op tempo. That comes from big Army and all the way down. But you can fight for predictability and make sure you follow the 8-step training model, running good company training meetings. If you ask a non-commissioned officer to lead a training event, you absolutely non-negotiable owe them the time to properly prepare for that to be successful. And my experience, when that doesn't happen, it's not an understanding. It's more of predictability and up tempo. But not being defensive. We're working on it. We're currently doing a detailed review of everything, unit training management, all of our POIs.
Sir, thank you very much for your presentation and kicking off day 2 of the Maneuver Warfighter Conference. Sir, any final remarks?
Yeah, hey, just everybody, thanks for listening. One of the most respectful things you can ever do to anybody is give them your time. So for those of you that listened, I'm humbled to be included in this list of speakers. You might have noticed I'm a little passionate about this topic, but to all of you, thanks for listening. I am what I am because people invested time and energy into me. I hope you got something out of this. And hey, if you disagree with me, or you don't understand, or you need help, I'm not kidding. Send me a note, and I will make every effort to make you successful. Most importantly, everybody, especially if you're out there deployed right now, God bless you. We're all thinking about you and praying you, and I wish you all nothing but success. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Hey, for all the teammates out there, it's a reminder, so you got to back out of this session and then click on the Sergeant Major of the Army Grinspan's presentation, which will start in the next couple minutes. Thank you.